The poem that I've been assigned is called A Work of Artifice by Marge Piercy, and I'm going to go ahead and read it now. The bonsai tree in the attractive pot could have grown 80 feet tall on the side of a mountain till split by lightning, but a gardener carefully pruned it. It is 9 inches high. Every day as he whittles back the branches, the gardener croons. It is your nature to be small and cozy, domestic and weak. How lucky, little tree, to have a pot to grow in. With living creatures, one must begin very early to dwarf their growth. The bound feet, the crippled brain, the hair in curlers, the hands you love to touch. So I started off with analyzing this poem by looking at the title, and when I look at the phrase "a work," it comes off to me as a creation and a masterpiece, something that just like a work. I think anytime I think of like a painter or someone who really worked hard on something, and so masterpiece, maybe not masterpiece specifically, but definitely like a really big deal, like a really big creation. And artifice, I looked up a definition of that, and it means like a trick or something deceitful, something having to do with deceit and betrayal. And I thought at first I wrote down in my annotations, maybe this is either the creator or the painter, like maybe a sculptor created something that was very deceitful and something like that, or like maybe the work betrayed him or something like that, and that's what I was thinking it was at first. But what I really wrote down was that I kind of can infer that it seems to be about, like I said again, just a masterpiece of deceit. So I'm just repeating what I just said. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to go into was the purpose of the poem. And throughout before I actually get into the poem, the purpose, I think I'm going to go ahead and just describe my annotations and what I really thought the poem was about, and then what I kind of discovered it to be about instead. So I thought the bonsai tree, at first I didn't really think that this poem was even about a tree, because it really just, it mentions a tree at first, and then it just goes into talking about something completely different that you can't really say a tree has. Like, a tree doesn't have hair and curlers or that kind of thing. So I definitely knew that it was a metaphor. And so I look at it as the poem just is about, to me, it's just definitely about the oppression of women and the things that women have to go through at the hands of being inferior to men and people who are higher than a woman. And so the oppression of women is what I really thought this whole poem was about. And I guess that goes straight into my purpose. And I said the purpose of this poem is to portray the ideals and beliefs that surround the characteristics of a woman physically and her personality. And I said the oppression and belittling of a woman is really expressed throughout the poem, and I believe the speaker's goal was to emphasize how women are treated as little and inferior. So really, I think that I don't want to say that the author was the speaker, but with the author being a woman, I thought maybe that this poem kind of had to do with the speaker just kind of putting her feelings out. I can infer that the speaker is definitely a woman and not a man, just because the way that a lot of the diction is used, like domestic and weak, and just it kind of sounds satirical in a way. And I thought that the way that the author is, the speaker is just putting it out there, seems like she's just oppressed and is kind of like making fun of how she feels, and this is how like the man is treating her. And I mean, well, I wouldn't say she's making fun of how she's being treated, but it's definitely something that she doesn't enjoy or wants to be under. And there's a lot of figurative language that I saw throughout the poem. I definitely saw a hyperbole in the third line where it says it starts in the second line where it says, "In the attractive pot could have grown 80 feet tall." And I think just that third line, could have grown 80 feet tall, like a bonsai, when I looked up what a bonsai tree is and what it looks like, a bonsai tree is very small, but it can grow big, and it usually isn't very big, and it takes a long time for it to grow big. And when I looked it up, it's like the fact that it could have grown 80 feet tall, and 80 is just a very huge number. Like 80 feet tall is insanely huge for a bonsai tree. So I definitely look at that as a hyperbole, and it's exaggerating the height, because it obviously can't grow up to 80 feet tall. But I think the exaggeration really goes into the fact that there's emphasis on how women have so much potential, and that this bonsai tree it won't grow. It obviously isn't going to grow to 80 feet tall. And you can't just say all women are going to be the most successful people in the world. But you can infer that there's like so much exaggeration because it wants the speaker wants to emphasize that women have this power. They have the potential. They're not necessarily going to get there, but they at least have that power and ability. And throughout the poem, I just think the bonsai tree itself, aside from hyperboles, I think the bonsai tree is the extended metaphor throughout the poem, and it's representative of a woman. I think the bonsai tree represents the woman, and it alludes to just everything that's supposed to be important about a woman. And bonsai trees, like I said, they're usually small and they don't contain a lot of foliage, but when they're watered and truly taken care of, they have so much potential to grow to great heights and beauty. And this is something that really goes straight into talking about how a woman has so much potential. And so, yeah. And then I also said that the pot, which is what the bonsai tree grows in, I thought that was really important because at first I thought, okay, maybe the pot is just there to be supportive and to be like to be there for the tree because it's just a structure of support. But when I looked more into it and I just started thinking about it a little bit more, I think that the pot that the tree grows in kind of symbolizes a set standard for the tree or the woman, and the way that she needs to live. I think it's a metaphor for the expectation that men have for women. And it's kind of like men, I wouldn't say men, but women are just born with this this way that they need to be and just act in life and have this set behavior and set standards, and they can't go past the limitations or the restrictions. And so I think the pot was something that holds and restricts the plant. And I think I can conclude through that this pot is symbolic of the oppression set forth by the man, and the woman has to be able to obey it and follow it. So I thought that was really important to take note of. And I also thought, and the gardener, I can definitely tell, is a man. And I mean, it uses the pronoun he, and so I think it's there's a lot of symbolism, especially with the pot and now the gardener. The gardener is a symbol and a metaphor for the man, and it's kind of like, it makes me think of like this gardener in here. It says the gardener carefully pruned it, and it's like the gardener has control over this tree, and the fact that he's pruning it, and pruning means to groom and trim and make it look better. So it's kind of like, well, it's like kind of contradicting, like, well, how is the gardener making this tree look better if he's oppressing it in a way? And so I really think that the gardener is symbolic of the control and the power that a man upholds over a woman. And I think the attitude is just really kind of indirectly annoyed, like trying to like show to trying to portray to the readers and put out there and emphasize that the speaker's very annoyed with the oppression of women, and it's like there's so much detail and description and symbolism, and like the women are really facing so much oppression through it. So I think that's very important. I think there's a shift. Well, I don't think, but I see that there's a shift apparent early in the poem after the 5th line describing the bonsai tree. It shifts from describing a delicate tree in an attractive pot to a gardener taking control. So that kind of goes back to the symbolism in the figurative language that I was talking about. And again, with the man taking control over a woman's life, I think it shifts a lot with that. I think the tone is very upset and just unhappy. Like I said, with the attitude, it's just very indirectly annoyed and disappointed. And I think in a way that I was thinking that the fact that the poem is written by a woman, and I know the author isn't necessarily the speaker, but I can definitely know that the speaker is a woman. And I think the speaker is just really proud of stepping up to defy this whole set standard that men have of women. And this whole like existence of this poem is like really about exactly what it's like. The whole existence of this poem kind of just portrays the ideas that like existed with the oppression of women. I don't know how to explain that, but and last but not least, I thought the theme of this poem was the potential of women is stifled and restricted, or not restricted, but more so oppressed by man. Women are held back from being able to stand out and prove their worth and ability to succeed. So I think this was really important about the poem, and I think that this was much more just much I don't know, just the fact that this poem I think was written solely to describe that this oppression needs to like maybe be stopped or something. But I think actually I don't want to go into that, but I think just this whole like symbolism and metaphor of it is very important, and just the fact that the potential of women is implied and emphasized through the hyperbole for the tree and the potential that this tree has to grow, and this gardener is oppressing it and not letting it grow, and we have to, and it's just saying like we have to start early to make sure it doesn't that it doesn't threaten like man. So like it's like the tree and the gardener is to a tree as a man is to a woman. So I think that there's this huge threat and fear, and that goes into how I think that men see women as a threat in this, and there's like so much hidden fear or an indirect fear. Like men don't want to imply or infer that they are fearful of women, but they are, because they're taking so many precautions and preventatives to make sure that women can't overpower them or oppress them. So they have to oppress them so that they don't have that threat upon them. And I think women are also denied equality to men, and there's so much inferiority. And I think maybe the time period that this poem was written in is very significant about that. And then something that I really thought was important was the contradiction and irony. Like how is he caring for this? It says that he's caring for this tree by pruning it, and he's crooning, and it's he's whittling it, and he's taking so much care of it. But is he really taking care of it? Because why would you want to lessen the potential of a tree by cutting it and trimming it and doing all these things to it to make it smaller when a tree is meant to grow bigger? And that's the same thing with a woman. Like there's irony. Like you want to, like people should be able to do whatever they want. They should be individuals and have that power. And so like how would you be taking care of someone by oppressing them and making them literally smaller than they actually are? And last but not least, I think the part with living creatures, one must begin very early. I think I said it before, but it's just with living creatures, one must begin very early to dwarf their growth. That just comes to me as we have to. It's just men saying we need to get on this. We need to make sure women are put down immediately. We need to make sure that their potential is stopped. It's like very important, and especially the part where it talks about the crippled brain and the hair and curlers. We need to make sure that women don't surpass like anything more than that. Like that they remain women and they have bound feet, and that they remain with a crippled brain and hair and curlers and nothing more. So I think just the oppression is very important, and that women can't be allowed to do anything more than that or be anything more than that. I think that's pretty much it. And yeah.